I had an opportunity in the early 1980s to go into East Germany and spend some time there, and during that time to see the quality of propaganda being broadcast into the East Bloc by Russia, the type of disinformation campaign that was going on. And I would have to say that since that time, the caliber of propaganda has become much more clever than that which was disseminated then. And today we're going to look at the danger of Russia's misinformation campaign in Europe. And indeed, today that misinformation campaign is worldwide. And we're also going to look at the failed response to that effort. And as we'll hear today, Russia's propaganda machine is really at this time in overdrive, and part of the focus, from my standpoint, seems to be to subvert democratic stability. And frankly, there's also an element of this that goes to the issue of fomenting violence in Eastern Europe. Now, myself and Elliot Engel had an opportunity to go into Dnipropetrovsk and talk to civil society, the women's groups, a lot of different organizations, the lawyers' groups, and this was one of the issues that people are concerned about. And these tactics have undermined the government in Ukraine and, frankly, helped lay a foundation for invasion there. This same plan is being worked in Eastern and Central Europe, and this Russian propaganda has the potential to destabilize NATO members, and it could impact our security commitments, especially if we look at some of what's going on in the Baltic states. So this Russian campaign, what one witness describes as the weaponization of information, seriously threatens U.S. security. Russia has deployed an information army inside television, radio, and newspapers throughout Europe. Some are doing the Kremlin's bidding and are given explicit guidelines to obscure the truth by spreading conspiracies. And I would just give you examples of some of the things you read now on these Russian broadcasts, or some of the things that are alluded to. One was a conspiracy that, that our own government here is responsible for everything from 9/11, the attack on 9/11, to the downing of Malaysia flight MH17 over Ukraine. Others are simply paid more for demonizing the West, while those who pursue credible reporting are pushed aside. Today we will hear from journalist Liz Weil, who dramatically interrupted a live broadcast to resign from RT, a Russian outlet, explaining she could not stand by its distorted coverage of Russia's occupation of Ukraine. Meanwhile, independent journalists in Russia have come under attack. There have been 3 journalists in Russia killed so far this year. Unfortunately, Ms. Weil is a rarity, so Russian speakers in the frontline states like the Baltics, Ukraine, Moldova continue to be told that their governments want to oppress and render them second-class citizens. Unfortunately, many are buying this divisive message. In parts of Europe where there aren't Russian speaker populations, there's also a message, and that message is that Western democracy is morally corrupt and that integration with Europe since the Cold War has failed. It's estimated that Putin is spending more than $600 million a year to deride democratic pluralism. And the U.S. response to this? Well, the agency expected to manage our response, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, is far behind. After years of Mr. Putin ramping up the effort in Russia, last fall the BBG finally launched its flagship response to Russian propaganda, a mere 30-minute television news program in the Russian language called Current Time. The program was put on air in Lithuania, Moldova, Georgia, Ukraine, and Latvia. But after just 4 months, it was pulled in Latvia because it couldn't draw an audience. Now, what U.S.-backed news and information that does get through, the amount of that is a thimble of journalistic credibility in an ocean of Russian-driven news distortion. And this isn't a matter of resources from my perspective. U.S. broadcasters are laboring under a flawed bureaucracy. Members may recall that then-Secretary Clinton called the agency defunct in her testimony before this committee in 2013. The Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office have been highly critical. And the agency hired a CEO, and he quit after 42 days on the job. Last week, the director of the VOA announced his resignation. Our international broadcasting is in disarray. The journalists of the BBG risk their lives reporting from the front lines across the world. They deserve better support. And the American people need much more from this agency if we're going to respond to the rapidly evolving media environment and better secure the long-term security interests of the United States. Last Congress, the House unanimously passed bipartisan legislation introduced by myself and Ranking Member Eliot Engel. This legislation is referenced in an op-ed today in the Wall Street Journal that I wrote. But I will just share with the members here that that legislation will help us fight Putin's propaganda by allowing more resources to be spent in the field and on content instead of on a broken bureaucracy, and by clarifying the BBG's mission, creating accountable leadership through a CEO, and reducing the bureaucracy. This can lead to a situation where the budget there can be spent on disseminating truthful news, and that should be the goal. Righting international broadcasting must be an urgent priority in our foreign policy, and now I would like to turn to the ranking member of this committee and the co-author of the legislation to do this, Mr. Eliot Engel of New York.